So there are 61 total Warframes in the game and probably many more to come. And at first they seem like a suit of armor type thing. Well, they're actually just a little bit more complicated than that. So that's where I come in. I'm going to go as in depth as I possibly can on the lore and everything you need to know about Warframes in general. I will also be taking a look into Proto frames and primes, and also keep in mind I will not discuss each individual Warframe as it is quite a bit and it won't necessarily fit in this video, so that stuff will come at a later date. To you veteran players, maybe this will open your eyes to something you may not know or an idea you like, or maybe you just end up correcting me. I don't know. Then to you new players, hopefully this also clarifies everything you wanted to know. And one last thing, I recommend you play the sacrifice before watching to avoid many spoilers, and maybe wait until the Hex mission to watch the part for Proto frames. So with that being said, I hope you enjoy this video and let's get into it. So what are Warframes? Well, this is why you should play the sacrifice mission, because the mission is where we learn everything we needed to know. So we get a Vitruvian, which tells us that these Warframes are actually people. These people were injected with the helmet strain of infestation, which is why we change our Warframe in the game via the helmet. So like I said, these Warframes were essentially people, whether voluntary or involuntary. They were injected with the helmet to become these biomechanical type suits of armor that really just destroyed the human inside. Now the helmet essentially gave these people armor. Well, it actually kind of just turned their skin into armor, which does sound extremely painful. It also connects the organs and changes them to help improve resilience to some other things. Of course, as we know, the Tenno learned to control these in a way, as if they were armor, kind of, which knowing that they were once people seems a little inhumane, kind of. Maybe even just a little demented, I don't know. But that's perfect for me if it is partly demented. So we also know that these Warframes have increased mobility, and they also have shields which give them better protection. On top of that, they are equipped with 4 abilities that use energy to power them. Abilities do vary from each Warframe. When it comes to getting their abilities, it is interesting to say the least. Now, from my understanding, how the Warframes determine their abilities is a little unclear. Like, no one really knows for sure. We can kind of guess, but we just don't know for sure. So in Prime trailers and other things that we've heard from Ballas, it may insinuate that we made them in like a certain way, meaning Ballas chose the abilities, which of course does make a ton of sense. But in the Mirage Prime trailer, a lot of people believe he insinuated that possibly one of their abilities were changed against his will, which brings a few new options. The abilities could have been changed by the chosen operator. To me, that doesn't make sense at all, as they more so control the Warframe and don't really modify it other than customization. The option that does make sense to me is that the person made from the infestation somehow changed their abilities or essentially evolved past Ballas's original idea, so the person modified the Warframe based on who they are. Or, you know, all of this could just be obsolete because Ballas may not have a choice in their abilities. It could just solely be based on the person the Warframe was made of, which if you look at the Proto frames, it does make a lot of sense since each Proto frame seems to match with their abilities. But I guess we don't fully know, and it'll probably be a little while before we find out. Now, their overall history isn't too complicated, mainly because each Warframe has its own history, which is what makes it more complicated. So these things were made because of the sentience, which, if you don't know, these sentients were basically made to carve a path to the Tau system because the Orkin nearly finished off all of the resources in the Origin system, I think. Well, eventually these sentients came back and started attacking all of the tall blue freaks, which caused a war. And the Dax soldiers, which were the Orkin's army, I guess, were not really cutting it, so they needed something else, which caused Ballas to experiment with the helmet strain of infestation, essentially creating the Warframes. For the most part, Ballas created all of them, but some other people/things, I guess, did create a few, but that'll be discussed a little bit later. So like I said, Ballas or the Orkin created them to stand against the sentients, but it did kind of backfire on them. When the people started turning into Warframes, they were sane for the most part, but they did go downhill fast, as the only sound they could make was pretty much inaudible noises or yelling, or basically you just couldn't understand them. so they went insane and nearly feral because of this. This also caused them to target anything they could see, especially the Orkin. Now, you know, of course, the Orkin did not like this one bit, so they came up with some plans to hopefully solve this little problem. First, they tried torturing these things to hopefully get rid of their mind, or at least numb them so they can be brainless zombies, which didn't fully work, which also brought us to the Orkin leaving them just on Lua, just left all of the Warframes on Lua. But that didn't stop the Orkin from being deranged, because the Warframes are also open to vivisections, meaning the Orkin dissected them while they were, still alive, mainly for research purposes, which is also a little deranged. Eventually, a researcher named Davis discovered that the Tenno could kind of control Warframes. Yeah, he didn't fully notice it, but in an experiment, Davis brought a cage of Tenno and brought them to the moon. This was next to a Warframe that weirdly escaped, and the Warframe went up to it and was actually nice and calm when they were just right next to the Tenno. This is what kind of helped start the research for transference and all of the somatic link stuff, which you can find this information in the Rhino Prime Codex. This eventually brought the Warframes to the way they are to this day, totally numb and controlled by us. So what Warframes are there? Well, as I mentioned, there are 61 in total, and for the most part, they are made by the Orkin or Ballas. These Warframes include Ash, Atlas, Banshee, Baruch, Citrine, Site-09, Daggith, Dante, Ember, Equinox, Excalibur, Frost, Gara, Garuda, Gauss, Grendel, Harrow, Hildren, Hydroid, Ivara, Jade, Kome, Kulirvo, Lavos, Limbo, Loki, Mag, Mesa, Mirage, Necros, Nezha, Nidus, Nova, Nyx, Oberon, Octavia, Protea, Rhino, Saren, Sevagoth, Stalker, which technically is a Warframe, Stynax, Titania, Trinity, Valkyr, which is somewhat modified by the Corpus, Valiubon, Volt, Varuna, Wisp, Wukong, Ureli, and Zephyr. Oh, and Chroma, Gyre, Inaros, and Koro, since I forgot them. Yeah, that was a mouthful. But there were a few also made by Albrecht and Trotty, so for sure, Corvex and Temple were of Trotty's design. However, Araxia was made from the Tales of Deviri, I think, and is stated to be one of Albrecht's Warframe helpers or something like that. So to me, it really isn't that clear as to whether Entrati made her or not, but I could be wrong. And then not only that, the Sentients do have a few Warframes of their own, such as Caliban and Revenant, even though Revenant is actually more Eidolon, but that's besides the point. And finally, the Void actually did create a Warframe. They created Zaku, which was made up of a bunch of different pieces of other Warframes. So if you wanted to be technical, this Warframe was still made by the Orkin with all the random pieces, but that's a stupid way to look at it. Yeah, not sorry for saying that. Now let's circle back to a few Warframes in particular. Once again, I am not going over their specific lore, but these all have something unique about them. These Warframes are Excalibur Umbra, Jade, Stalker, Dante, Kulirvo, and Daggith. These Warframes can all remember some part of their past or didn't totally go insane from the infestation. That's what makes them unique. But Stalker is even more unique, as he is nearly sentient and can remember and nearly say full sentences, unlike any other of the Warframes. He also has a kid, who is Jade's kid, which the kid is also a Warframe, but to be honest, that part kinda hurts my head to think about, because who knows, maybe in 20 years we could play as Jade's baby. God, that would be a little weird. Another part to Warframes is their prime variants. These variants were the ones made by the Orkin in their prime. Yeah, so they are technically better, and the problem with primes is some don't necessarily make sense, like Zaku Prime. Like, if Zaku was made in the Void from other Warframe parts, how exactly does it have a prime? It's the same thing with a few other Warframes, but for the most part, the prime versions are the ones that are brand spanking new. But there are other Warframes that earn the prime status, most likely meaning that they became good enough to become a prime variant, or at least get a prime variant, and that's kind of how I interpret it, kind of. So that could explain why they get turned to prime, but kind of doesn't at the same time. I guess it just kind of depends on people's preference and what they think. It's a weird thing. Every part of this whole thing is weird or interesting, but this topic can be just saved for another day. We're just not going to talk about it anymore. Actually, another topic that could just be saved for a later day is skins and other customizations. Now, obviously, these have to be canon, right? Like, I would assume so, because when you see this amazing pink butterfly rhino, it has to be canon. Like, imagine one of those things fighting the sentients in the old war, and imagine it side by side with a tall freaking smurf. That'd be very comical. Now, obviously, cosmetics would be something we put on the Warframe ourselves. Things such as sindanas, sigils, and other ornaments are things we can easily equip onto the Warframes. Even helmets could be changed by the Tenno, but I feel like those are a kind of a gray area and could lean more to how the skins work in lore. I personally believe that skins are just other models for the actual Warframe, similar to Prime minus the stat changes, of course. Imagine them kind of like another year of a car, same car but newer or just a little different. I also like to think that some Orcan researchers saw some of the Warframes such as Ember and said, let's make them hotter. So they did. I feel like this is really the only way it could work to have these skins canon in the game, but I'm sure there are other ideas on how they could work, so feel free to let me know. It is worth mentioning that some skins have their own lore, some of which are myths and widely considered not canon, but that really kind of just depends on what each person thinks. Now, all of this is not to mention the two new Warframes we had hinted towards us in TennoCon, such as the Fun Guy Warframe, which is interesting to hear about, and Uriel the Devil or Demon Warframe. As of this video, we do not know much about their existence, but yeah. So next we have Proto frames. Now, I know these aren't technically Warframes, but I threw them in here because this is super similar. So Proto frames are people as well who have been injected with the strain of helmet, but weren't fully consumed by the infestation, making them half human, half Warframes. These humans were also infected by the Technocyte Plague, which is a whole other thing in the 1999 timeline, but that could have been the cause as to why they didn't get fully turned. It's also good to mention that they may still get fully converted into Warframes in the far future, but right now they are in a looping cycle, so that won't be a problem, hopefully. Anyway, these proto frames were made for one purpose, which was to be our backups just in case we didn't have access to our arsenal in 1999, basically to give us more power and options to stop the indifference. Well, we never really needed them as Warframes, which was good, but it honestly is quite sad. Their whole existence is based on being used. Honestly, I couldn't imagine what that's like. But you know, it does make sense that this is their only purpose, just because they were made by the infamous Albrecht and Trotty, the same guy who would shoot a puppy just to get something, whether it was $1 million or just a lollipop. But he made them for that purpose. But they also did manage to go above their own purpose and help us beat the 1999 loop. Kind of. But who knows, maybe they could have some higher purpose eventually. But as of right now, there are a total of 10 proto frames that we know of in the game. This includes Arthur as Excalibur, Aoi as Mag, Letty as Trinity, Eleanor as Nyx, Amir as Volt, Quincy as Saito 9, Kaya as Nova, Velimir as Frost, Minerva as Saren, and Flare as Temple. These proto-frames are essentially freedom fighters, and they are a part of the Hex that revolved around a small rebellion against the Skaldra forces in 1999. They are currently stuck in a loop, and that starts the year over continuously, just from, I believe, the beginning of the year to the end of the year, just continuously goes and goes and goes. So these proto-frames do get their minds wiped sometimes. I think canonically they might get it wiped every year, but in the game you have a choice to wipe it or not wipe it, so maybe their minds stay, maybe they don't. I'm not 100% sure where that is lore-wise. But anyway, similar to the Warframe part, there is a few more proto-frames coming which were announced in TennoCon. We have Haro's proto-frame, Father Lion Allard, I think I'm saying that correctly, and then Wisp's proto-frame, Marie Leroy? 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 I think it's Leroy. But anyway, we know that they are a churchy type bunch, but other than that, we really don't have much, so we just kind of have to wait to learn more about them. That's really all there is when it comes to proto frames for now. I really think there are probably way more out there, or eventually there will be way more out there, because I'm sure there has to be more than just 12 proto frames, like maybe a Rhino proto frame or even a Caliban proto frame. That'd be cool, but I doubt that happened. But we'll see, because we could also get our friendly neighborhood protagonist from Dark Sector. Doubt that, but who knows? I guess he might show up. I highly doubt it though. Speaking of finding more Warframes or Proto frames and stuff like that, where else could we find more? Well, a few places come to mind with the current state of the game's story. First, we could be getting them some more from Tau. Like, we know we're probably going to be getting Uriel, I believe, closer around in the Tau area, I think maybe. But since we know Warframes have made it to Tau, multiple Warframes could have just been locked away after the old peace and peace treaty and things got cut off. Maybe just a lot of Warframes got stuck there. I don't know. Or maybe there might just be more sentient Warframes that the Sentients created, just like Caliban. Or hell, maybe the Orokin, who, you know, made it to Tau, started making more Warframes, because why not? Which, now that I think about it, probably Albrecht and Trotty probably has a new Warframe for us. I'm not 100% sure though. Another place would obviously be 1999. Now, I personally think that they would either make a new area or expand the mall drastically. I think more than 10 proto frames would be too much in just the mall, but I don't know. This one is an obvious one because there could be the same number of proto frames as there are Warframes, and honestly they could just simply make more proto frame skins without needing them to be an NPC. Lastly, I think Lotus could actually give a Warframe. Somehow she would be able to give us a Warframe that's specifically tailored to us for an upcoming threat. She may make it using her powers, so it could be something involving void energy, or maybe something completely unique. We will just, have to wait and see. But since we are thinking ahead as to what could be next, what are some cool Warframe ideas? Well, I looked at the internet and saw a few ideas, such as a barbarian frame, a beast frame, and a tarot card frame. I really like the idea of the tarot card frame just because we do have Kome, and she's pretty cool with dice. So imagine an equivalent Warframe, but with tarot cards. I also had a few of my own ideas. I would like to see another sentient Warframe, but make it a mimic. I didn't go too in depth with any of these ideas I made, but I figured the mimic frame would be able to copy abilities somehow from other players in the party, and if there was no one in the party, they would be able to copy something from the enemy. Another few I would like to see would be based on a chef, because we do have dual cleavers, so we gotta use them for something, of course. Another would be an aquatic Warframe. I know we do have Hydroid and Ureli, but I'm pretty much thinking of something that could swim. I think that would require a whole new mechanic, but it could be interesting. Lastly, I think there should be a bear frame, since we do have Varuna, and we might as well just get a bear frame as well, right? It could also add to the U slot requirement, because we used to need a U, but now we have Uriel, and yeah, so we don't really need the U anymore. But we could have another U, and we could just call it Ursa, or something basically for that. And just to clarify, I am thinking of these bears, like all of these bear pictures I'm showing right now. I'm thinking of these ones specifically. I know someone's gonna think of a different kind of bear, but no, I'm thinking about these bears. Every single bear on this picture, these are the ones I'm thinking about. I just wanted to be specific. So that is everything when it comes to Warframes and Proto frames. Their lore isn't generally intensive, but when we start talking about each individual frame, it will get quite a bit heavier. Also, there are a few ideas for frames, so let me know what you think of that. So that being said, I want to thank you for watching. Maybe like, maybe subscribe. Also, maybe join the Discord and link below. I really don't give a crap, so you do you. And yeah, so let me know what I should work on next, and I guess I'll see you in the next video.